Hi, I'm Neville, and what we're going to be doing today is the Taurox Prime. A lot of people have been bugging me to actually do a recording showing how I do camouflage painting on the Taurox Prime, and largely to the begging and pleading of Jonathan at a local store, I've decided to do it. And here's a bit closer here so you can actually see the way the camo works, what it looks like in the end, and we'll just try and give you a slightly better close-up on that. Something to take note of if you're a new modeler: don't just throw water, use a thinner, because it actually has paint medium. If you put in enough water or you thin your paint too much, what will end up is the paint will no longer bond properly. So it's very important to rather use thinner than water. Another thing to use if you use paint that clogs up your gun too often is airbrush flow improver. Need very little of it, and that'll just retard how quickly it dries on the needle. Right, so that's the basing completed. Always remember, do a base. It actually helps to bond the rest of the paint at a later stage. And we use just a standard light grey, and we will be doing our first layer of camo when we get to it in a flat brown. By the way, if you see me using Vallejo paints as opposed to Gameworks, it's not because they're better. Gameworks paints are very nice. I just happen to like the dropper bottle, and they're slightly cheaper. Now we have the body and chassis, the rear wheel carriage and the front wheels, or wheels, tracks. We have the missile pod, which I believe will offer me the best points value, and we have the cow catcher, or tyrannid catcher if you like. Now when we actually, what we have to do is first paint this model a colour of the first camo colour that we want, which in this case is going to be that brown that I showed you, and then we'll get on to actually sticking on the camo masking, and then we'll add another layer, then more camo masking, and then another layer. Just to give you an idea of where we're aiming, there's a tank in the camo that I'm doing, and a sentinel, and a tarantula. So now you can see where we're going with this. What happens is there's the brown colour, as you can see. Bits and pieces. So we actually mask that off now, and we'll paint on another colour. Then we'll mask that off, and we'll do a khaki. Yeah. Now that looks like quite a fancy camo pattern, and it is, and it costs a bit. I had a friend that had a laser cutter. Unfortunately, I can no longer use his services, so I have to purchase the stuff now. But if you want to save yourself money and you like doing some of those nice patterns you see them doing on the models in the codexes, you can always just cut a odd shaped pattern in your choice of masking tape or painter's tape, and then you can actually use this and stick that on the model, which is a cheap way of doing it, and it works very effectively, especially for some of the Xeno models. However, what I'm going to be using here is a mini hexagon pattern. This comes from a crowd in, I believe it's the UK, and it's not the cheapest, and what happens is you actually peel off each piece and stick it on, and this is actually made out of a plastic that forms to a large degree to your model. So let me get a piece off there, put that aside. So this will in the end look and remain brown, and what I like doing is using a very stiff bristled brush to make sure I get it in all the corners. I sometimes use a toothpick. I use whatever is necessary. So now I'll go around the model, putting bits and pieces of this on, leaving gaps here and there so I can actually put in some more masking for the next camo colour. And we'll get back once that's done and I'm ready to paint the next colour. There you have the masking down for the brown colour. So now that we spray paint, now you can tell why we spray paint. You have to do the whole entire model again, and also the paint would actually, if applied by brush, would run underneath all the masking. No matter how dry a paint you use, it looks a mess by the time you're finished. But I've done obviously only the areas that people are going to see. Notice the edges, the sides, even if they turn the model upside down, they'll see spots. And now we get to painting. With a khaki. And what I've done is I've turned down the pressure down to about 15 psi, because if you use too much pressure you'll actually blow the spray paint under the masking. Right, we now have the Taurox painted khaki, and I say khaki, not khaki as the Americans do. I use the South African pronunciation. You'll notice, if you look carefully, and I might just zoom in on this, oops, you should be able to see some of the pieces that are actually stuck on here. This is essentially stopping the khaki from colouring in where we had brown. And if you think you can only see a few pieces, I have just discovered that the Taurox Prime has more surface area than tank. So here is the model. Now that we've painted it with the flat brown, we put on the first layer of stencils, we've then coloured it khaki, we then put on another layer of stencils, and we now are going to colour it with hopefully we can focus here, old wood. Actually that takes it in reverse image, doesn't it? That's old wood and white. Now if you're looking for the same colour with the model workshops, it's pretty close to Zandri dust, but they always lighten it up. They never mention it, but it's not the colour that that's in their container. So I'll be mixing those two together for the last layer. And in case you're wondering, well, once again this will be reversed, but there is the stencil, which is an HD stencil system by Anarchy Models, and you can always find them at anarchymodels.com. What I do is an even mix. So first of all, remember, always use thinners where possible rather than water, and a little bit of airbrush flow improver. That is the final layer of camo paint. I will be completing the entire model for those who actually want to hang out after I've removed the stencils. I'll have a couple of tips on how to actually paint very realistic looking metal. I will then go on to use pigment for some effects. I will also do some chipping effects. I will be doing a wash, which is very difficult when you've actually got camo, because if you make a mistake and you have to do any painting, you end up having to paint in 3 different colors to actually just cover up your mistakes. All camoed up. What I will do next is paint the tracks and the gun and some other steel pieces, so I can actually show how I actually bring those to life. I'll also paint the missiles themselves, and then I'll get back to you. But before we go, I have to admit, that does look really cool. And what I will be doing is using the standard red to paint the blazons on the side there, with the gold and red there.